Good morning all. So today we will continue with our previous session. So we were discussing about how to work with the data in ASP.NET. We added one grid view and we tried to retrieve all the records from the student table. So today we will discuss about the other controls like details view, repeater control, list view and data list. So let's open that application and let's see what we have implemented previously. So let's open that application, file, open, and we will create that website which is our demo website. Okay, so we have implemented a registration form, and in this registration form we have all these fields: email, password, semester, course and photo. And when user click on register, we upload this photo in the upload folder and we store this data into our database. We have created one more page, that is students.aspx, and in this particular page we have added one control, that is a grid view. So it will display all the data from students table in tabular form. So let's run this application and let's see how it is working, and then we'll continue with that. So we are already using the master page and the theme in this particular application. We are using the Bootstrap, so this header and footer is common. We have the registration form, so let's insert one more record in that. So let's say we have some dummy record, semester is 6, web technology, and even if you will not upload a photo, it will consider the default photo. So let's click on register. So we are getting that registration successful message. We have not set a link for the students.aspx, so I'll manually open that page students.aspx where we are using the grid view, and we have set the pagination. So in one page 2 records will be displayed. So we had inserted few records in last session. We deleted one record, that is B, and today just now we inserted one record, so it is coming here. Fine. So this is a grid view. It provides the pagination functionality, it provides the editing, deleting functionality, and generally it is used for the admin side. So now today let's add one more control first, that is a details view. Now where it is required. So let's say in my table I have 25 columns for example. So definitely will not display all the columns here. Will display only the important columns here, like a primary phone number, will not display the secondary phone number here. So for a particular record, if you want to retrieve all the details, then we can put a detail view. So at a time detail view will display one record. You can navigate to the other record using the pagination definitely. So let's see how to use the detail view. So we are not using, let's say, the photo, right, that path here. So we want to display that also, all the records from this table. So let's add a detail view in our page. So I'll go to the students.aspx and here we'll use all the data controls. So I'll put one control, that is details view. Okay, so let's add it here. Again, the first step is we need to specify the data source. So we want to retrieve only one record, so I'll not use this students SQL data source. I'll create a new data source. So let's click on the new data source. I'll select the database we already have, and let's call this as a student data source. Okay, so we will retrieve only one student in that at a time. So student SQL data source, we will select database connection string. We have saved in the web.config file with the name as DB, so we are just selecting that connection string. So this is our connection string, database.mdf, and the name of that connection string is DB. Fine. Now here from this I have only one table, and what I want is I don't want to retrieve all the records. I want to retrieve only a particular record. Now which record? So that we need to specify in where column. So we want to retrieve all the columns, so I'll just use the select star, or else you can specify how many columns you want. Now when you click on the where, you will get this dialog that which record you want to retrieve based on which parameter. So what I want is whatever record user will select from this grid view. Let's say user click on this select, so I want to display the complete detail about DDD. If user click on this, then I want to display the complete detail about that particular record. So ideally my where, that ID will come from this grid view. Okay, so in my Visual Studio I'll specify that column, that is a primary key and auto increment, that is our ID, is equal to, now from where it will come, whether it comes from a query string or a session or a cookie. So these are the state management technique, but right now it comes from a control. So once you select this control, or you can select anything, but you need to specify next is which parameter. So let's select this control. So immediately you will get this which control you want, right? So I want to retrieve it from the students grid view, and if nothing is selected, do you want any default value that by default this record? No, I don't want. So I'm done with my this where query, so I'll just click on add. So this is my where clause, that ID, and that ID @ID, that parameter and the value will come from students grid view dot selected value. Fine. So I'll click on OK. So there is one where clause here. Even if you want to allow that adding or updating or deleting functionality, you can generate this statements also. I don't want it right now, so let's click on next. I want it only for read only purpose, and I'll click on finish. You will get one more data source here, which is a student data source, but that the query is different, that we retrieve student based on the selected value from this grid view. Okay, let's give the name to this particular grid view, detail view, as let's say student detail view. Okay, fine. Now you can specify the format as we specified here. So you can click on the auto format. Let's specify again any one format, classic, let's say. Now whatever changes you will do, the same change you can do from the code behind, or even you can look at the property, you can set different colors and different properties also. So the font color is different, so by default, I mean, this property allows you to do that. Okay, so we specified a particular format, we have already selected this particular data source, and here also we have the option for fields. In grid view we call it columns, here we call it as field. So again, if you don't want all the records, you can specify certain columns, so only those values will be displayed. So right now we want everything, so let it be as it is. You can specify the field also here, and the pagination you can enable if you have the large the records, then pagination is also fine. Okay, let's see the output of this. Okay, let's run this application. Fine. Now by default the detail view will not be displayed because there is no record selected from this grid view, and we are not specified the default value because I don't want any default record. But once I click on the select on this, it appears like this, that all the columns, you can see only few columns are there, but here we can have all the columns. So this is the main difference between the grid view and the detail view. Here in the grid view it will list down all the records, and here we'll get a single record. So generally we use this in the admin panel, right, and the detail view is used along with the grid view. So we are getting these records. Let's see the code behind the source code for this detail view. Let's try to understand that. So again, here also we have various tags, like let's say detail view, then ID, run it, you can specify the difference, that padding between two cells, right? So cell padding, some formatting you can specify, Then the main thing is here the fields, that how many columns you want. Fine, what are the different columns you have, and then you can specify different colors and formatting, like when user click on the edit. Right now editing is not allowed, but if editing is allowed, then how you want that particular format, right? So the background color for that alternate row style. So right now you can see the alternate row style is white. So if I just remove this, or if I change this, that particular color will appear as this alternate row. So this is a first row, the second row, something like that. So you can change that format also, and this is the end of the detail view. And this detail view retrieves the data from the data source, which is data source ID student SQL data source. So we have the next data source, which is a student SQL data source. Connection string we are retrieving from web.config with the name as DB. If you look at the web.config, you will get that connection string here, that the name is DB, and this is our actual connection string. Fine. So if you store it in a database, later on if you change your database server or database name, whatever it is, you can just make change here and it will be applied everywhere in your application. Fine. So connection string we are using, connection string DB, and then we are having that select command, and which is from this control parameter, which comes from the control, which is students grid view. Fine. So this particular data source will retrieve the data from the database, and it will provide the data to this particular grid view, detail view, sorry. Fine. So this is how we can use the detail view. You can apply definitely the CSS, that Bootstrap classes here. Fine, but fine, right now this looks good. Okay. So this is about the grid view and the detail view. So grid view, we use it to display multiple records in a tabular form. So we have different templates, that like header, how the items will appear, alternate item, right? And both supports the pagination also. While details view we use to display a single record with lots of fields, right? But in both grid view and the detail view, we are not having the support for templates. So we'll discuss what is template. So in other control we have that support. So this is the difference between different controls available in ASP.NET. So now the next, okay, so why we use the grid view? So as I said, that it displays the data in a tabular format, like it looks like HTML table. So we have, you know, different columns in that. Even we can have the header, footer we can specify, right? And columns can be auto generated, or we can explicitly specify, that we discuss. And it supports the pagination, it supports the sorting, selection, editing. So this is what we already discussed in our demo. Grid view, we have the field called columns, like this, right? So we already discussed that here we have the fields in the details view, and we specify a different field like bound field, control field, right? You can put a hyperlink also in that if you want. And similarly in the grid view also we have those fields, but we call it as columns, right? While in details view we call it as fields. So you can auto generate these columns, or we can manually specify that what are the fields you want. You can specify different parameters, like how what will be the header text. So the header text will appear in this particular header. So sometimes you want to change, you can change that also. Fine. So yes, we have different types of columns, like bound field. Generally you want some text output. Sometimes you want to put a button like delete, for example. Then you can put a button field, a checkbox field also. And default edit and delete, we call it as command field. You can put a hyperlink. Image also. So right now in our application we are using just path, but you want to display the image, you can, you know, change it to the image field also. So these are the various types of columns we can have in the grid view. So your grid view code looks like this. In exam also we need to write like this. Fine. So we need to at least remember and understand this. So this is what we already implemented. So here they are not using any, you know, formatting. So basically the grid view have only like columns. Even if you don't want to specify the columns, we can have auto generate columns is equal to true. Okay. Now how to retrieve the data in a grid view using code behind. So let's see that. So let's go to our application. So I'm going to put one more grid view where we will write some code to retrieve the data. So after this, let's put another grid view. Okay. Now here I'll not specify data source from this. I'll write some code, right, ADO.NET to retrieve the data and to see populate the data in this particular grid view. So that is grid view 1. So let's call this as a, we already have the students. So let's say the students 1 grid view, for example. Now if you look at the source, only two properties mandatory, one is the ID, another is run at equal to server. Now let's write some code on the code behind, in the code behind. So we'll go to the students.aspx and let's retrieve the data from the database. So I have to add two namespaces like system.data, because I want a disconnected architecture. I want to create a data set, and that data set we will associate with the grid view. And I also want to retrieve the data from the database, which is SQL data source. So system.data.sql client. So I have two namespaces, system.data and system.data.sql client. System.data contains data set, data table, data row, these are the classes, and SQL client contains the SQL connection, SQL command. If you want to use the data reader, then SQL data reader connected way, and SQL data adapter, which is disconnected, right? So as we discussed in the database part. So the first step, again, let's write it from the scratch. So we'll have one more revision. So we need to create a connection object. So SQL connection, the object name is con is equal to new SQL connection. We need to give the connection string here, or you can write con dot connection string is equal to this. So these are the two way, right? One is a constructor, you can specify the parameter connection string, or else you can specify the property also, fine. And this database you want to connect, so let's get a connection string for that, fine. So this is my connection string. So let's specify it here. It contains again a backspace, so either you make it 2 times or you can put just @ before this, fine. Okay. Next is we need to open the connection. So let's say you can open the connection after creating a command. You can also open it, but let's open it right now, and I just close the connection. So this is the first step, that I'm just creating a connection, and let's open the connection. Now I want to use the data adapter. So I want to retrieve the local copy, and then local copy I'll associate it with the grid view, fine. So first of all, let's create a data set. Data set is a local copy. So there is no like SQL data set or Oracle data set. It is just like a data set, fine. So data set ds is equal to new data set. You can give the name, fine. Data set contains the data tables, multiple tables, but we will retrieve the table from the database using data adapter, fine. So let's create a data adapter. So SQL data adapter. So data adapter is ideally a bridge between a local copy and the original copy, that is our database original copy, and local copy, that is our data set. So it will retrieve the data from the database and it will populate it into the data set. So then we can close the connection and we can retrieve the data from the data set locally. So let's say DA is equal to new SQL data adapter. Again here we can specify two parameters like SQL command. We can directly give the command also, but we have not created the command. So I'll use one of the constructor where I need to give the select command and a SQL connection. You can see the parameter, right? So we already have the connection and I want to retrieve all the records. So let's write simple query that select star from student. Okay. So it will retrieve all the records. Now data adapter will fill the data, will populate the data in local copy, that is data set, and for that we need to use a method called fill, where we need to give definitely two parameters. One is a data set Second is optional, right? That is the table name. So sometimes in data set local copy we already have the table, so we can rename it. So right now only one table I have, so I'll just specify the second parameter as student, which is optional, but the first parameter is mandatory, that in which data set you want to store this copy. So after doing this, what I have is local copy of the student table. Fine. So now if it is a console application, we display it on a console using console.writeLine. If it is a Windows application, we can bind it with the grid view, data grid view also. And here also we have the grid view. So we can retrieve one by one from the data set, but what I want right now is I want to display all the records in the grid view. So I'll use students grid view, like students one grid view, and there is a property called data source. And in this data source we need to give either a table or a data set. So in my data set I have only one table, so I can directly give the entire data set, which is DS. And after you change the data source, you need to call a method called data bind. So I'll just call this method called data bind. So data will be associated with the grid view. Now we have written this code on the page load event. So wherever we open this page, in page life cycle, page load event will be called, and this grid view will have all the data from that student table. Let's see the output of this. So we'll have two grid view and one detail view definitely. So let's run this. Okay, so this is how it appears. This is our grid view, first grid view, and this is second, in which we retrieve the data from the database using that code. We can also make formatting, different properties we can specify of the grid view, and even you can specify the CSS that Bootstrap class. So it's easier. So let's do that. So I'll just specify that students grid view 1.css class. You can use other properties also, like back color, and manually you can do everything, right? So CSS class is equal to, let's use the Bootstrap table class, and I want it with the border, so I'll use table dash bordered. Okay, so no need to manually specify the color coding and everything. So we just applied a CSS class as Bootstrap class table and table bordered, and you can see it will look good. At least it will occupy the full space with some padding. Fine. So now it looks like this. Okay, good. Fine. So this is our record. So previously it was like this, the same data we have, but we have added some formatting in that using that Bootstrap. You can change the color like this using that .NET properties, because here we specified that auto format, we changed that colorful theme. Okay, so this is how we can retrieve the data in a grid view using code behind also. So this is what we have. So here, instead of retrieving it from database, what here we are doing is we are just creating a static list with two customers with some columns, right? And then this data set, this is also a data set, right? It is a list. So that also we can specify as like grid view dot data source is equal to that list. So here what we did is we retrieved data from the database, and then that data set we specified as data source, while in this presentation these are static records, right? So and at last we are calling this data bind. Okay, fine. Then we discuss about the details view. So as I said, it is used to display a single record, and usually we use it along with the grid view, right? So we also have the insert, update, delete option in that. So single record we can update, we can delete, we can change different values in that. And in grid view we have the columns, while in details view we have the fields, and it's very easy to change the appearance, as we discussed. Now the next control, and similarly we can use the code behind for the detail view also. So again we use the data source and the data bind properties. So next is a repeater control. Now what is a repeater control? In repeater control we will not get anything by default. So we have to do everything manually. So at the same time we will have, we can say, the full control how we display. So grid view does not have the full control, so it is having only like a HTML table, while in repeater control is the most flexible, as we are going to write the code ourselves. So when you don't want some default things, you want manually everything, then you can use the repeater control, and also very lightweight at the same time. While in repeater control we have different templates, and this is not available with the grid view. So we can specify the header template, the item template, alternate item template, right? So instead of that putting a text box, we can put different controls in that we can replace. So different templates are there in this repeater control, but the thing is we need to manually write this. Okay, so that is the repeater control. We'll take an example of that also. The next control is a list view. So list view is again a data list control which is flexible, and it is similar to the grid view, but it also provides the templates. So it's like a repeater provides the template, grid view does not provide a template. Repeater does not give you the default properties because it is derived from the control class, while in list view we have this back color, fore color and everything. Templates are also there, so it is in between that. Fine. So there is next control called list view. We will compare everything. So in list view we have different again templates, like how the individual item will be displayed, right? How the edit item template will be there. So these templates are available in the list view. So we will discuss the comparison, but let's first implement this other two controls. So let's go to the Visual Studio. Now first of all, let's discuss about the list view. So what I am going to do is, after this grid view, second grid view, I am going to add a list view. Now list view is more than the grid view. Fine. So front end generally we can use either list view or repeater, and in back end we use generally the grid view because it has only a tabular output. While in list view we need to specify the data source. Now the same data source we can use that multiple records we want to display. Fine. So fine. So let's refresh the schema. So at least here from this we removed certain columns. So I'll just click on refresh schema. So we will get the default columns and everything. This will delete all existing column fields. Okay. So let's refresh the schema. Okay, it has been done. So we are getting this option for configuring this list view. We have refreshed this, right? So now item template and layout templates are required. So at least two templates we need to specify in that list view. Let's see, configure list view first of all. So here you can see, like a grid view, let's make it first of all colorful. So like a grid view, we are getting a grid, but we can also have this kind of records. You can use we go to the front end of any website, let's say the shopping cart websites. So we get multiple items like this, that 3-4 columns, right? And multiple items, we have the add to cart button and everything. So this kind of the format you can get, which is not available in the grid view. Even you can have just like a bulleted list records, simple, just one after another records like this. Fine. So let's use this one. So at least we can see that how we can make a front end of our website. Even you can enable this checkboxes like enable editing, inserting, deleting and pagination also. Let's just enable the pagination. Fine. Whether you want the previous next or a numeric. So let's use previous next right now because we are already using numeric in a grid view. So once I click on OK, you can see the records are displayed differently, right? So first of all, let's see the output, and then we will configure it. We'll make it more beautiful. Okay. So this is our grid view and this is our list view. So this is the difference, right? So in front end we can put this like this. Let's make it more beautiful, let's display the photo. This does not look good that we display the path. Definitely in front end we should not display the path. Instead of that we should display the photo. So I want some formatting. So let's open Bootstrap. That is the best way to have some formats. So I'll use the component which is let's say card, right? Because card, there are different formats to display the image as well as text. So I think this looks good, fine. So I'll just copy this code. So this is how I want to display multiple records, one record, another record, the third record. So I just copied this code, fine, from this, and we will paste it in our template. So let's see how to do that. Now this is a item template, then there is a alternate item template also. So if you look at the source code of this, fine, okay. So this is our list view. We'll have lots of templates, fine. So we have the list view, we have the data source, and in one that row we are getting 3 columns. Then we have the alternate item template. I don't want any alternate item, for example, that is optional. So I can delete this also. Even the editing and deleting we are not using right now. Otherwise, see here we have the option that we can replace the text box with the different controls. So we have these templates available which is not there in our details view or in a grid view. We have only formatting, fine, that how your edit row style will work, fine. So here we have the templates where we can specify that okay, I want a column or something like this. So this if there is no record, then how you want to display the message. So there is a empty data template also, fine, empty item, the group insert, if you have enabled that insertion also, but fine, I want to play with this item template because I want to display it in a proper format, okay. The overall layout, how it will look like, whether you want a tabular form or you want a div, something like that. So again, right now we will not change the overall layout, later on we will play with it. If the particular item is selected, how you want to display. So these are the different templates we have. So right now what I want is this item templates are displayed in a TD with some background color. So I don't want first of all any background color because I will use the Bootstrap, and then they are just putting some message and a label, a message and a label, and all these are the labels. So that's why it is displayed like this, that ID, then some the message, that the record, again this photo. So we need to change this. So what I am going to do is in this particular TD, first of all I'll put that Bootstrap card. So I want different cards for different records, okay. Now here I want an image, right. So I will apply this Bootstrap class. So what I will do here is I'll put an image. So ASP colon image ID, you can specify it as a photo image. Definitely the runnet is equal to server. I have to use this CSS class property also. So I'll use CSS class because this is a Bootstrap, and because of that this image will appear properly, right. And now I don't want this. Now what is missing here is what will be displayed in this particular image. So what I want to display is a particular column, right, and we have the photo column. So right now we are displaying in a text. Instead of that we will display this as a image URL because we know that is a image URL, fine. Now this has eval will retrieve the records, right, that is there in the database, right. We already binded the data source, and from that if you want a particular column value, then you can use either has eval or has bound. So has bound is for read and write both. So in a insert item template, right, bind, sorry, so we are using this bind, and in for read only purpose we can use the eval. So what I will do is I'll specify the image URL, which is a property of .NET image control, and there we specify that value that okay, the photo will be displayed as image URL, fine. So I missed that single code, okay. Now, what I want is the email address in a large font. So, fine, in that case the label will work. So, instead of this card title, we will put a label. So, we are just removing this formatting which is default, and we are making it more beautiful using Bootstrap. So, now I do not want to display the ID, because if you see the shopping cart, they do not display the product ID, just the product name and image. Even the password is not needed, for example. And yes, I want to display the other two records, which is a semester and a course. Fine. So, this is a description which I want to display. So, let us remove this. So, now in my TD I have only one card, Bootstrap card, right, and we removed that built-in formatting, and we can put the details like semester and the course, okay, here. Fine. Then we can put a button also like read more or buy now, something like that, and you need to write the accordingly the code for that. So, let us make it as proper format, right. So, I have added one card in an item template. So, that will be replicated for all items, okay. Let us see the output of this. So, now my list view will be displayed in a proper format. So, let us just compare it. So, previously it was like this, simple a text, and now if you look at this, yes, we are getting an image, we are getting some the email address like product name, for example. If you are implementing a shopping cart, this is a product image, and then some description of the product, and then we have the option. So, this is similar actually, right, but here we are not using any formatting, or we are using only the labels to display the records, but which is not ideally possible or applicable for the front end. So, in front end we can make it like this. So, all the students photographs, name and their percentage maybe will be displayed like this. And if you look at the the detail of a particular students, we can write a hyperlink, and the user will be redirected to a particular page where user will get a single student or single item, whatever it is. Fine. So, this is how the list view works. So, we have the flexibility that we can change the templates, okay. Fine. Now, let us discuss about the another control. So, this is a list view. Next, let us put a repeater control, and before that we can use the data list, which is in between the list view and the grid view. Fine. So, let us put a data list also. Again we specify the students SQL data source. Data source we are keeping common because we want to retrieve all the records. So, here also we have the item templates. Fine. So, here we can specify the templates. Even we have here the property builder. So, we have like few options like what you want to specify as a header, how you want the header, whether you want a vertical repetition in a tabular format or just like a flow format. You can specify some formatting also. So, this is the data list. Fine. So, let us do one thing, let us specify the format as colorful here, and let us specify one template again here, just the item template. Again here also we have the alternate item template, selected item, right. So, here in item template I will put a label. Fine. So, even we can do it from the back end. Fine. So, this is a selected item, data list, different formatting we have. So, here let us put a label, only just we will display, fine, and we will use enable binding, okay, and that expression, that bind we will use. So, let us do it from the code behind, so we can just easily copy paste it, okay. So, the data source we already have this, and similarly like email address I want to display. So, we have this label, right. So, I will just use the same code instead of this label, okay. So, what I specified is a item template here also we are specifying the item template, but fine, we are specifying some bootstrap and everything. Here I have just added one record. You can replicate the same thing here also, and it will display only the email address. Fine. So this is a data list. So I can say ListView is the newer version of the data list, where we have the more flexibility, more options. So this is how the data list will appear. Fine. So let's see the output. We'll get only the list of email address, just one after another. So based on your need, you can use all these controls. So fine, here we are using this. Fine, we are not using any of the Bootstrap class. Fine, so we are not getting it in a very good format. Okay, now the next is a repeater control. So let's put after this data list, I'll put another control, which is a repeater control from this data. Now the repeater control will not have any built-in functionality. You can just specify the data source, that's it. Fine. So these are data source, and these are the two options for data source if you want to configure or refresh the schema, but there is no properties or no built-in functionality like formatting. Nothing is there in the repeater control. If you look at the property of this, if you look at the property of this, only few built-in properties we have for the repeater. So very lightweight, it provides the flexibility, but you need to write everything here, right? So there is no code. This is a repeater control. Now again, it provides the templates, and that you need to manually write, but it is only for that reading purpose. So there is nothing like pagination, nothing like insert or update item template. Fine. So very lightweight, we can use it again for the front end. So let's do one thing. Let's specify some header template that it will start, records will start like this. So you can put a table tag into the header template, and then in item template you can have multiple tr, and again in footer you can have end of the table, something like that. Fine. And for item templates we can write again different code here. So let's use again in repeater, it's the useful control. So let's apply the Bootstrap in this. So I'll go to the Bootstrap, and let's say we have the list group, right? So let's display the email address in this particular format. Okay. So what I have to do is, it starts from UL, and there is multiple li, and here we'll have our email addresses, and then at last we have the UL. So what we have to do is, we have to copy this UL, right, another list in our header template, because so the records will start, and this is a heading for that, and at the same time footer will be the closing of UL. So the header and the footer we specified. If you are using a table, you can use the table tag as a start and end, and then what you want to display, that you decide. That if you put a card, then definitely side by side is also possible, but right now we are displaying it one after another, so output will like this. Fine. And multiple records also you can specify. So right now we want only the again email address. Fine. So let's use the same email label with data binding as value. So I'm just putting this label here. So you can put again next different controls, sub UL for example, right? You nested that ULLI to display the other records, but I want to display only the email again for this repeater. But the thing is, repeater is very lightweight, and we are not getting any built-in functionality. Even if you see, there is no back color, fore color, nothing, right? So everything you need to specify manually, right? Let's see the output of this. It will also display the same output as data list, because we display all the records, but we use the Bootstrap, so it will look good. Fine. So again, this is a data list, we are getting all the records, but we have this formatting and everything in the data list, while here we do not have any formatting. So that's why I use. So we are getting the records one after another, and it looks like that. Even we can generate this kind of output, right, using repeater control. You need to copy paste that kind of code. Fine. So this is all about the database connectivity in ASP.NET. We discussed the important controls from this data part. Now let's summarize that what is the difference between this 4: grid view, data list, repeater control and the list view. Fine. So, as we discussed that grid view, we have the limited design option, only tabular. So, it works like HTML table. So, generally for the front end purpose we use, because quick edit update, it provides pagination, sorting also it provides, so built-in functionality, and at the same time definitely there will be no overhead because in backend that code will be there. The data list is more than the grid view, right? Again it provides the built-in functionality, so little overhead will be there. You can do the manual work also in that. You can have the design also, as we discussed. So, we can have the properties like border style, back color and everything. Fine. The next is a list view. We use that for the front end purpose as well as back end also, and the repeater is again for front end purpose, but in both list view and the repeater control, right, in list view we have the templates, right. So, it is like we can say that the hybrid of data list and the grid view, where we have the pagination and this functionality, insertion, addition functionality as well as the template also. So, and this is a kind of new control in this family, right. So, it is like a new data list more than that. And at last we have the repeater control, very lightweight, no overhead, but